That day, when I was only 9 years old, my parents left me in a strange place in the middle of the Oregon countryside. They didn't say goodbye, didn't look back once, just left me standing there, in front of the old wooden door of my grandfather, whom I had never really known. In my hand was an old suitcase, containing not only belongings, but also broken dreams and a betrayed young heart. They said, "We need time to get our job settled." But I knew they would never come back. I stood there, in the bitter cold of the winter morning, listening to the sound of their truck rolling down the dusty road, gradually disappearing from sight. That echo, to me, was the sound of the small world I once knew crumbling. My grandfather opened the door. An old figure with deep eyes and rough hands welcomed me into a completely different world, a world without parents, without the laughter of family, only silence and untold secrets. It was the beginning of a painful journey, but also one where I found strength, love, and a legacy I never imagined would be mine. Today, I want to tell you my story, a story of betrayal, of growing up, and of a fight to reclaim my own life from those who once called me their son. If you think money can buy everything, this story will make you think again. Join me on this journey, where the past is shattered and the future is written from the fragments of truth. When I look back on my life, few people know that behind the title of a tech millionaire, there was a boy who was abandoned by his own parents at the age of 9. I remember that day clearly, a cold morning in a small, remote town in Oregon. I was standing in front of my grandfather's old wooden door, clutching a worn suitcase, and behind me my parents' truck was slowly rolling away, leaving me in a daze, cold and indescribably lonely. I heard them say just a few hasty sentences. "We need time to stabilize our jobs." But I knew deep down they would never come back. It wasn't a promise. It was a denial. The feeling of betrayal was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. In that moment, my whole world shattered, like a wilted flower in the cold winter. My grandfather, the person I never understood much, opened the door to greet me with rough hands and a stern gaze. He didn't say much, but his presence brought a strange warmth, like a small fire flickering in the dark night. The first day there, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the old bed in the attic room, listening to the wind whistling through cracks in the door, feeling an invisible loneliness surrounding me. I missed the noise, the hustle and bustle of the city, the place I used to call home, where my parents were, where my friends were. Now, all of it was just a distant memory, like an old movie. My grandfather's house was a completely different world. No bright lights, no honking cars or loud music, just the creaking of wooden floors, the warm smell with smoke, and long days passing the wild fields. But my grandfather didn't let me hide in loneliness. He started giving me small jobs, feeding the horses, collecting eggs, chickens, mending fences. Simple tasks that required patience and endurance. I can't deny that, at first, I hated those jobs. I missed home, my parents, the life I had. I felt like a failure, like an abandoned child of my own family. But my grandfather never complained, never rushed me too much. He was always there, quietly teaching me through actions, through wordless patience. I still remember the first time he gave me a wrench, telling me to try tightening a screw on the old harvester. My hands were shaking, embarrassed, not knowing where to start. But he just smiled, looking at me with encouraging eyes. "Just try, Anthony. No one is born perfect." His words were simple but profound. As each day passed, I began to learn to accept my new life. I realized that love is not only found in parents, but also in people we never thought to come. My grandfather not only taught me how to work on the farm, but also taught me how to stand up after every fall. He told me about his life, a man who had gone through many ups and downs, but never gave up. In the quiet of this countryside, I began to feel the power of resilience, honesty, and responsibility. I was no longer the scared, lonely boy of years ago. I began to open my heart, began to take slow steps on the path to adulthood. I understood that life does not always have people by our side. Sometimes, we have to learn to stand up for ourselves, to find strength within ourselves. And my grandfather was the one who helped me do that. Even without my parents by my side, I still have a family, a warm home where wounds are healed, where hope begins to be planted. That is my journey, starting from the coldest and loneliest days to become a man me of today. When I started living with my grandfather, I had no idea that he would change my life forever, not only with his love, but also with his burning passion for engineering. He was an engineer who built a technology company from scratch. Although life on the farm was simple and rough, inside that old workshop was a world of machines, components, and circuit boards. He started teaching me the basics: how to wire, how to use solder, how to read circuit diagrams, things I had only seen in passing on TV. At first, I was very clumsy. My hands shook when I held the soldering iron. I burned components many times, soldered in the wrong place. I thought I would give up, but he was always there, never complaining, just smiling and saying, "Mistakes are the only way to learn. Keep going, Anthony. No one is born perfect." The long afternoons I spent months in the workshop, soldering, disassembling, and reassembling until the joints were perfect. Then he took me to a new world, the robotics club of the nearby high school. I was the youngest, always feeling out of place among the older, more experienced students. Many people looked at me with skepticism, even contempt. I remember one time when I presented my idea for an autonomous trash-picking robot, a simple but practical design. Some of the group laughed at me, saying I wasn't capable. But my grandfather told me, "Don't let anyone decide your worth but yourself." I spent months designing, programming, and testing. There were many failures. The machine didn't work. The programming was wrong. The sensors were not responsive. But each time, I remembered his words and got up stronger. And then came the day of the state robotics competition, when my robot passed each test challenge, automatically picking up small pieces of trash scattered on the field. I felt an unprecedented happiness and pride. That victory was not only a trophy, but also an affirmation that I was not an abandoned loser, but someone who could do great things. My relationship with my grandfather grew closer. In the evenings at the work table, between the welding torch and the circuits, he not only taught me engineering, but also passed on life lessons: patience, responsibility, and the spirit of never giving up. He said that technology is not just about machines. It is also about how we change the world, how we help others. I began to understand that even though I grew up in a small countryside, I could still step out into the big world with my passion. In the U.S., STEM competitions and robotics clubs are not only playgrounds, but also opportunities for children like me, in remote, underserved places, can shine. Gradually, I changed. From a shy, timid boy, I became a confident young man with responsibilities and clear dreams. I was no longer an abandoned child, but the heir to a legacy, not just material assets, but resilience and creativity. But the journey was not easy. I had to study at school, work on the farm every day, and pursue my passion for robotics, a stressful and tiring life. There were times when I was so tired that I wanted to give up, but every time I did, I thought of my grandfather, who never let me give up. I knew I had to do it. I had to become someone he would be proud of. That was my journey, a journey not just to survive, but to win, to prove that anyone, no matter where they started, can reach the top if they don't give up on their dreams. On the day I turned 18, my grandfather called me down to the kitchen, where the first rays of sunlight were shining through the old window. He placed a small wooden box in front of me. Inside was an exquisite silver ring, engraved with the word legacy. He said to me in a deep, meaningful voice, "This is not just a ring, Anthony. This is a message, a responsibility, and a tradition that our family has preserved for generations. You are now an adult. It is time for you to understand the truth." I looked at him, my eyes filled with unspoken questions. And then he told me the truth about my parents, the truth that I had silently felt for a long time, but had not dared to face. My parents did not abandon me because they did not love me. They abandoned me because of their greed for my grandfather's property. They had tried to deceive him, forging documents to take possession of the family property when he was away on a business trip. But he found out and cut off all ties, relationship, and decided to give all his assets to me, the grandchild he truly loved. The feeling at that time was indescribably mixed. Anger, hurt like a fire burning in my heart, But there was also a deep understanding of my grandfather, who always wanted to protect me from new wounds. I didn't have time to ask anything more. Just a few months later, my grandfather suddenly passed away from a stroke. The pain of loss flooded my heart, as if I had just lost the only person who understood and protected me. But the burden did not stop there. At the funeral, when I stood next to his cold coffin, my parents, suddenly appeared like ghosts from the past. They entered with fake faces, cold smiles, and false apologies. I looked at them, not with compassion, but with indignation and vigilance. They did not come to visit, did not come to restore the broken family relationship fragments. They came to fight over the property, the $100 million-plus estate that my grandfather had left behind. The tense confrontation began at the funeral, then continued for days afterward. They kept calling, texting, even coming to the farm to beg, plead, and manipulate me mentally. But I was no longer the abandoned 9-year-old. I was an adult. I was ready to fight to protect my grandfather's legacy, not just the money, but also the trust and honor. The legal trial was like a never-ending battle. My grandfather's lawyer, Ms. Laura Bennett, a shrewd and fair woman, was on my side. She presented every clause in the will, the undeniable legal evidence, especially the silver legacy ring, something that only I had, encoded to prove sole inheritance. My parents tried to deny, accept, refute in every way, even using threats, insults, and psychological attacks to put pressure. But I did not collapse. I maintained my position, intelligence, and determination. I understand that in this society, especially for wealthy families, inheritance is always a fertile ground for fraud and intrigue. But I did not fight only for property. I fought for justice. I fought so as not to lose myself in those bloody battles. Every time I faced them, I clearly saw greed in their eyes, a total betrayal of those who once called me their son. I also saw myself, a boy who was once abandoned, now standing up to protect himself and the values that his grandfather had passed on. It was not only a battle of money, but also a battle of self-respect, of betrayed family love, and of the spiritual strength to overcome all. I know this struggle will not be easy, and it may be long, but I am not afraid, because I had a teacher, a grandfather, who taught me, you are not an abandoned child. You are the heir to a legacy that is much greater than material things, and I will not let anyone take that away from me. When my grandfather passed away, I not only lost my loved one, but also shouldered the responsibility of inheriting a giant technology company, the legacy that he had worked so hard to build. The early days of taking over the company were challenging. I was a young man with little experience, standing in the middle of a meeting room full of shareholders, veteran employees, sometimes with skeptical eyes, even opposition. But I did not let myself be defeated. I remember what my grandfather once said, no matter how difficult it is, you must keep your faith and work with all your heart. I started by listening, learning, and gradually proving myself worthy. More than just being company manager, I wanted to preserve my grandfather's vision. Technology must serve people, must help those in need. And from there, Henry's Hope, a charity fund named after my grandfather, was born. The fund not only gives scholarships to children orphans, but also created STEM education programs, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, to give them access to life-changing opportunities. I remember every meeting with the children at the foundation headquarters, looking at their innocent eyes and thirst for learning. I saw myself in them. A girl who once received a scholarship now becomes a chief engineer in a company, leading breakthrough technology projects. That is the real legacy, not the numbers on the books, but the lives changed, the dreams empowered. Even though I could buy anything in the world, I still choose to live simply on my grandfather's farm, where my journey began. I am attached to the rural community, to the friends around me, because I understand that it is love and sharing that make life valuable. From an abandoned boy, I learned that the greatest wealth is not money, but love is the spiritual legacy we leave to the next generation. My story is not just about wealth, but about how we overcome adversity, rise from the broken, and create great things. If you are listening to me, remember that no matter how difficult life is, always keep faith and strength to move forward. Find yourself a teacher, a friend, or a relative to guide you, and believe that each of us can write our own legacy, a story to be proud of. I am Anthony. I am someone who was abandoned, but I also chose to live fully, love, and inspire. Thank you for listening to my story. Lie with passion, live with resilience, and leave your own mark on this world.